You eat 3 times a day: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and every single time, someone is making a decision for you. Not a doctor, not a nutritionist, not a government official who cares about your health. A marketing executive, sitting in a boardroom, whose only job is to make you eat more, spend more, and come back tomorrow. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a business model. And today, we're going to expose exactly how it works. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The global food industry is worth over $8 trillion. $8 trillion. That's larger than the GDP of every country on Earth except the United States and China. And that number grows every single year. Not because people are eating better, but because people are eating more. More processed food, more packaged food, more food that was designed in a laboratory to make you addicted. Yes, addicted. That word is not an exaggeration. We'll prove it. But first, you need to understand how this system was built and why it was built to keep you sick. In the 1950s, the food industry faced a problem. World War II had ended. Soldiers came home. Factories that made military supplies needed new products to sell. And food companies saw an opportunity. They had the technology to mass-produce food at scale. They had the distribution networks. They had the money. What they didn't have was demand. So they created it. They hired the best advertisers in the world. They targeted housewives with promises of convenience. They targeted children with cartoon mascots and bright colors. They targeted men with protein and strength messaging. And it worked. Within a decade, processed food went from a novelty to a staple. Frozen dinners, canned soups, packaged snacks. Americans, and then the rest of the world, stopped cooking from scratch and started buying boxes. The food industry had found its golden goose, and they were never going to let it go. But here's what was being added to the products marketed as healthy, and the companies knew. The research proving sugar's harm existed inside their own laboratories. A 2016 investigation by the journal JAMA Internal Medicine revealed internal documents from the Sugar Research Foundation showing that the industry had been manipulating nutritional science since the 1960s. For 50 years. 50 years of corrupted science. 50 years of bad dietary advice. 50 years of rising obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. All to protect sugar profits. Now let's talk about addiction. Because this is the part the food industry fights hardest to deny. In 1999, the CEOs of the 8 largest food companies in America gathered for a secret meeting. The topic? The obesity epidemic. And what they were going to do about it. One CEO stood up and said the industry needed to take responsibility to reduce sugar, salt, and fat in their products, to stop targeting children with junk food advertising. He was laughed at, pushed out, his ideas rejected, because the other CEOs understood something he didn't want to accept. Their products were not just popular. They were engineered to be irresistible, deliberately, scientifically, addictively. Food scientists at major companies spend billions of dollars studying what they call the bliss point. The bliss point is the exact combination of sugar, fat, and salt that makes a food product maximally pleasurable. Not just good, maximally pleasurable. The point at which your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical released by drugs, in the largest possible quantity. They test hundreds of formulas. They run brain scans. They study eye movements. They analyze chewing patterns, all to find the precise combination that makes you unable to stop eating. And once they find it, they put it in every product. Doritos, Oreos, Pringles. These products were not created in a kitchen. They were created in a laboratory by scientists whose job title is literally food engineer. And their success metric is not nutrition. It is repeat consumption. How quickly do you finish the bag? How soon do you buy another one? That is the measurement of success in the food industry. Not how healthy you are, how addicted you are. A former Coca-Cola scientist, speaking anonymously, told reporters that internal company research had identified that their beverages triggered reward pathways in the brain similar to those activated by nicotine. Similar to nicotine. And rather than reformulate the product, they used that information to make their marketing more effective, to target the moments when people's reward systems were most vulnerable. After exercise, after stress, after meals. The science of addiction, used as a marketing tool. Now let's talk about what this costs you. Not just in health, in money. The average American family spends $1,200 per year on ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food, defined as food with 5 or more ingredients, most of which are artificial, now accounts for 60% of the average American diet. 60%. And here's the number that should make you furious. The healthcare costs associated with diet-related chronic disease in the United States alone exceed $1.7 trillion per year. $1.7 trillion. Obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, all linked to diet, all costing the healthcare system and individual patients extraordinary amounts of money. And who profits from that sickness? Not just the food companies, the pharmaceutical companies too. Because sick people need medication, diabetes medication, cholesterol medication, blood pressure medication, and many of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world have financial relationships with the largest food companies. Cross-ownership, shared board members, joint investment funds, the system that makes you sick, and the system that sells you the treatment for your sickness are connected. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a financial structure. Documented, publicly available, almost never discussed. Now let's talk about what they do to children, because this is the most disturbing part of the entire story. Food companies spend approximately $2 billion per year marketing directly to children in the United States alone. $2 billion. Targeting children who cannot distinguish between entertainment and advertising. Children whose brains are still developing. Children whose food preferences, established before the age of 10, tend to persist for life. The food industry knows this. It is why Ronald McDonald exists. It is why cereal boxes have cartoon characters at child eye level on supermarket shelves. It is why Happy Meals come with toys. It is why YouTube and TikTok are flooded with child influencers promoting snacks and fast food. The goal is not to sell one meal. The goal is to create a customer for life. To wire a child's brain to associate ultra-processed food with happiness, reward, and comfort before they are old enough to make informed decisions. In 2006, the American Psychological Association concluded that children under the age of 8 cannot understand the persuasive intent of advertising. They cannot tell the difference between a show and a commercial. The food industry knew this decades before that report was published, and they built their entire children's marketing strategy around it. Now let's talk about labels. Because food labels are one of the greatest deceptions in commercial history. Natural, wholesome, nutritious, part of a balanced diet. These words have no legal definition in most countries. None. A company can put natural on a product filled with artificial ingredients and face zero legal consequences. Part of a balanced diet, a phrase that appears on some of the most nutritionally empty products on supermarket shelves, was invented specifically to deflect criticism. It means nothing. It commits to nothing. It is legal cover, designed by lawyers, approved by marketing departments, placed on packaging to make you feel better about a purchase that makes the company richer and your body weaker. And then there are serving sizes. A standard bag of chips lists the serving size as 28 grams. Approximately 11 chips. 11 chips. No human being on Earth eats 11 chips and stops. The companies know this. The serving size is not a recommendation. It is a legal tool to make the calorie count on the label look acceptable. The real calorie count, for the amount a normal person actually eats, is often 3 to 4 times higher than what's printed on the front of the package. But that number never appears. Because if it did, the product wouldn't sell. Now let's be fair. The food industry would argue, and they are not entirely wrong, that they are simply responding to consumer demand. People want convenient food. People want affordable food. People want food that tastes good. And the industry delivers all three. They would argue that personal responsibility matters, that adults can make their own choices, that nutrition information is available to anyone who wants it. These arguments have some merit. Convenience food has genuinely improved lives in some ways. It has made calories accessible to people who couldn't afford fresh food. It has saved time for working parents. It has fed populations that would otherwise go hungry. The controversy is not that processed food exists. The controversy is that the industry has systematically corrupted the information environment that people use to make choices. They funded the science. They wrote the dietary guidelines, in many cases literally, through lobbyists who sat on government advisory panels. They designed the labels. They targeted the children. They engineered the addiction. And then they said, it's your choice. But here's what is starting to change. For the first time in decades, there is genuine momentum against the food industry's power. In 2023, the World Health Organization declared that aspartame, an artificial sweetener used in thousands of diet products, is possibly carcinogenic. The food industry spent millions disputing the finding, but the conversation had started. Brazil, one of the world's largest food markets, introduced mandatory warning labels on ultra-processed food in 2022. Black octagon warning symbols on the front of packaging. Impossible to miss. Impossible to ignore. Early data shows a measurable reduction in purchases of products carrying the warning. In the United Kingdom, regulations limiting the advertising of junk food to children came into force in 2023, restricting the times and platforms where high-sugar, high-fat, high-salt products can be promoted to under 16s. Mexico introduced mandatory front-of-pack warning labels in 2020. Chile did it in 2016, and within 2 years, purchases of labeled products dropped by 25%. 25%. The system that has operated unchallenged for 70 years is starting to face real resistance. And the food industry is fighting back, lobbying against labeling laws, funding research to discredit warning systems, acquiring health food brands to appear progressive while continuing to produce the same ultra-processed products under different names. Coca-Cola owns Honest Tea. PepsiCo owns Naked Juice. Nestle owns Garden of Life. The same companies that engineer addiction now own the brands that health-conscious consumers trust. The consolidation is almost complete. Here's what I want you to take from this. The food industry is not evil. It is rational. It does exactly what any business does. It maximizes profit. The problem is that maximizing profit in the food industry means maximizing consumption. And maximizing consumption means engineering products that override your body's natural signals. Your body tells you when you're full. The food industry spends billions learning how to make you ignore that signal. Your body tells you when something is too sweet. The food industry finds the exact point just before that threshold and stays there. Your brain tells you to stop. The food industry makes stopping feel impossible. That is the machine, and it runs 24 hours a day. In every supermarket, in every fast food restaurant, in every vending machine, in every children's television program. The lesson is not to never eat processed food again. That's unrealistic and unhelpful. The lesson is to understand what you're dealing with. When you pick up a product and see natural on the label, you now know that word means nothing. When you see a serving size that nobody actually eats, you now know why it's there. When you feel unable to stop eating something, you now know that feeling was engineered by a scientist in a laboratory whose job was to make stopping impossible. Once you see the machine, you don't have to stop eating. You just have to stop trusting it blindly. And that's the most powerful thing they never wanted you to know. That's it for today. If you made it this far, thank you. Seriously, this channel exists to expose the systems that shape your life without your knowledge or consent. Real stories, real numbers, real consequences. Now, quick break. Making videos like this takes serious research and production time. I use Redacast to handle the voiceover. It turns any script into natural AI narration in seconds. If you're building your own channel, link is in the description. Drop a comment and tell me which industry you want exposed next. Because the food industry is just the beginning. Subscribe if you want to see the rest. Because once you understand how these systems work, you'll never look at a supermarket shelf the same way again. I'll see you in the next one.